"Your Majesty, the Queen has given birth to a wonderful girl," the courtiers informed King Louis XI of France. He cast a disdainful glance at his wife, Charlotte of Savoy, as if the child's gender depended on her. The birth of Jeanne of France was overshadowed from the very beginning. Her father would have preferred a son. As for a daughter, daughters were meant for political marriages. Jeanne was still an infant when her father found her a fiancé. The unfortunate groom turned out to be her cousin, Louis of Orléans. Despite this, Jeanne received a proper upbringing, even though, as a woman, she could never become queen in her own right in France. Until the age of 5, the little girl was raised in Amboise alongside her mother. Charlotte led a secluded life, avoiding grand balls and social gatherings. Louis XI, on the other hand, preferred to reside in a different residence, far from his family. When Jeanne grew older and started walking, her physical flaws became apparent. She had a frail physique, clubfoot, and scoliosis, which made her resemble a hunched dwarf. Her mother loved her unconditionally, but others pitied her, believing she would never find happiness in marriage. Louis XI openly disliked his daughter. Not only was she a girl, but she also fell far short of the Renaissance ideals of beauty. When Jeanne was 5 years old, her father sent her to be raised by his cousin, François and Anne de Lignières, who had no children of their own. They loved her as if she were their own daughter and provided her with a full education, including religious studies. Jeanne spent long hours in prayer, developing a special devotion to the Virgin Mary. According to legend, when she was only 6 years old, she heard a voice saying, "Before your death, you will become the founder of a religious order in my honor." In the year 1476, as soon as Jeanne turned 12, the age of marriage according to Catholic tradition, her father married her off to Louis II, Duke of Orléans. The Duke of Orléans first saw his bride on their wedding day and was utterly disappointed. He had heard rumors that the princess was not a beauty, but the reality exceeded his worst expectations. The political marriage bore no fruit. Jeanne was unable to conceive a child. Whether her father was disappointed by this remains unclear. On one hand, he was relieved that his frail daughter would not bear children to continue the Orléans lineage. But Louis XI's worst fears still came true. He died in the year 1483. After him, the throne passed to 13-year-old Charles VIII. However, on the 7th of April, 1498, King Charles was making his way through a low gallery in Amboise Castle to watch a tennis match. Suddenly, he hit his head hard on the doorway. He managed to watch the match and even spoke with his companions and wife, but at one moment he collapsed backward. Charles VIII died that very evening. The next king was Louis II of Orléans, now King Louis XII, alongside Jeanne of France. Immediately, the new monarch began seeking an annulment under various pretexts. Louis XII might have accepted his unattractive wife had she at least been able to give him an heir. However, 22 years of marriage had yielded no children. At the time, a marriage could be annulled due to close blood or spiritual ties, forced consent, or the inability of either spouse to conceive after several years. This is why consummation was of such great importance. Moreover, Louis XII wished to marry Anne of Brittany, the widow of the previous king. By doing so, he would solidify his legitimacy on the throne and secure the Duchy of Brittany for France. A trial before the ecclesiastical tribunal began. Louis XII presented 4 arguments. First, he cited the degree of blood relation. He was a third cousin to King Louis XI, Jeanne's father. Next, he claimed that he and Jeanne had spiritual kinship as well. Louis XI had been Louis XII's godfather. Third, he argued that he had been forced into marriage with Jeanne, and that she had been too young to consent voluntarily. And finally, he asserted that the marriage had never truly existed. That is, it had never been consummated. According to Louis XII, he could not bring himself to share a bed with his wife due to her unattractiveness and unpleasant odor, which was why they had no children. The ecclesiastical tribunal decided to hear Jeanne's testimony. She countered that there were exceptions for the first 2 claims, as they had received a papal dispensation. She insisted that they had consummated their marriage. Jeanne could count on her fingers the times, places, and instances when the marital union had been confirmed. She declared, "Although I know very well that I am not as beautiful nor as well-formed as other women, my marriage was indeed consummated." Ultimately, the sworn testimony of the king carried great weight with Pope Alexander VI of the Borgia family. The marriage was annulled on the grounds of coercion. In return, as an unspoken gratitude, Louis XII had to reward the Pope through his illegitimate son, Cesare Borgia. Louis made him Duke of Valentinois, granted him a pension of 20,000 golden crowns, and promised him the hand of one of his female relatives. Now, Louis XII was free to marry Anne of Brittany. As compensation, Jeanne was granted the title Duchess of Berry. She spent the rest of her life in a monastery. Due to repeated acts of self-mortification, her health deteriorated significantly. On the 10th of January in the year 1505, she wrote her will. On the 22nd of January, she visited the monastery for the last time before taking to her bed. When she died on the 4th of February, 1505, an examination of her body revealed bruises beneath her hair shirt and iron chains. Throughout her life, she worshipped the Virgin Mary, and upon her death, Pope Alexander VI granted 10,000 days of indulgence to anyone who recited the Rosary of 10 Aves that Jeanne had composed in honor of the 10 virtues of Mary, which she strove to emulate: chastity, prudence, humility, faith, obedience, devotion, poverty, patience, mercy, and compassion. A request for her canonization was submitted in the year 1614, but was only officially granted in the year 1950. Jeanne became a symbol of humility and self-sacrifice. She endured the worst humiliations in silence, never losing her kindness, courage, or gentleness.